Hey guys, Kevin Shaw here, editor-in-chief of Mopar Connection Magazine. We're here with Jim Hannan. We're actually in Dude's Garage here in Hendersonville, Tennessee. So don't mind a lot of the Chevy stuff, but we got some really cool big block Chevys surrounding us every which way.
We work on everything here.
Oh yeah, you guys really do knock out a bunch of stuff. Today we're going to go over some, certainly not all, and definitely not most. Some big block Mopar heads, and we're certainly not going to cover all of them. We only have just a handful here, and we are going to go over some highlights of the aftermarket as well as some things that the factory did. And I was considering bringing the TrickFlow 270 that I have, or the Stage 1 ported Hughes Edelbrock Performer RPM, but then I didn't want to take any engines apart. So we've got just some loose cylinder heads that we had in our shops, and we thought we'd go over some of the innovations and some of the differences between what's available and what isn't. Jim was kind enough to bring out a really neat piece that is not too dissimilar from what's actually running on your satellite, right?
It's the exact same casting on the Belvedere.
It is.
324 is what I'm running on that now.
Okay, because the engine that's in the Belvedere,
it's a 62 model.
It's a 62 413.
Yes.
You pulled that out of a
Chrysler 300.
You pulled it out of a 300. So let's start with that one then, because that was something really unique. That casting. First, the most noticeable thing, of course, is that there's no pedestals.
Right, and they have little, actually bolt-on pedestals. Instead of being saddles cast in, you actually have this little pedestal that you could give material to with a shim or take some away. They did that a lot in the old super stock before they came out with this other deal, which you can shim these too.
Certainly,
but
yeah.
This was, talking to a good friend of ours, he was telling me all the things they used to do with these heads other than the fact that they don't flow very good.
Now, we were estimating the dates around 58.
59, I think, 59. Is when the RB came out.
Okay.
And this basic casting is what they had. Now, the numbers may change, but this is what they all started life as.
And this is a
324.
324, that's right. It's 324.
24 casting. It's got little bitty valves. The ports are really tight, but yeah, it's got small little no valves in this, but it'd be a 161 exhaust, and I believe it was a 204.
Okay. But it is a closed chambered head, which is nice. It has a little bit of shrouding around the valves.
It's actually 80 cc's. Like that one, this is deeper from here to the floor, where these are little. It's 80 cc's.
Okay. Well, that does make for a pretty decent, little quench.
It was 10.1 compression with the pistons down 50, I think is what it was.
Wow.
Like
okay. That. All right, and these would be on. You would find these on 413s and
361s.
361, yeah.
It would have been on the 350 that the original Golden Line 350, I think, had a 324 on it too. That was an RB engine. Okay. That's small, but they didn't make many of them, 1 year run. But yeah, then they could change your dynamics of the valve actuation by just shimming or machining off a little bit of these pedestals to kind of cheat the super stock stuff until they came out with the, I can't think what the casting was, where they added the two corners in 64, I think it was. And then they cast the pedestal saddles into the head in that time frame.
In 64.
Late 64, I think it was, and then they stayed that way till the end of run.
Okay.
With the 452s and all those.
Now we're skipping ahead because this is a 906.
Right, which would have come out in 68.
68. Now we were talking about the 915, the 915 head.
Yep.
That was the 1 year only 1967 head. You'd find that on the RT Coronet, you find that on the GTX. So in 68, when we get the more open chambered head, and regardless whether you're a RT Charger or even an A12 6-pack, you had the 906 open chambered head.
Yeah.
And that was really surprising. I for years had thought that the 812s had different heads or
well, the six-pack engine, the piston came up higher, and
right.
So which gave it a little more compression. That's
right.
what made the six-pack engine feel better.
So that this head actually stayed pretty much unchanged until what, the 452?
Right, when they put hardened seats in.
Okay.
Port designs are a lot the same. You can see the pinch that's in here, and this one's got a bad pinch in it too.
Yeah, we're gonna move this over.
Just terrible flowing exhaust ports.
Interestingly enough, there's a lot of architecture that is very familiar to guys who aren't solely brand loyal to the small block Chevrolet.
Yep.
And
they were cast off of that, I believe. That's what the original castings were from the small block Chevrolet.
So if you knew your way around a mouse motor, you could really make a set of the 906s or the 915s or even the 452s really flow. And you know, it's a pretty decent cylinder head. So something that you'll see, obviously we haven't messed with these heads, is that we haven't closed off any of the heat risers, and that's something that became pretty standard for a lot of aftermarket parts.
You get head gaskets or intake gaskets to block them too.
That's right. You can block those off. For those guys who don't know, can you tell us what the heat riser does?
It allows heat to pass through the underside of the intake to get the floor of it warm, so that you can take off quicker in it without warming the engine so long, and don't get that cough back through the carburetor. And when you do away with that, it takes them forever to get an engine warmed up. I nurse that engine out there forever till I can finally drive off with it.
Right. So it's really more of a drivability feature.
It's
that
just a
was
drivability thing, yeah.
Just
that gas coming in gets cold anyway, so it's cooling the intake off, and then keep the performance or the drivability there, they keep the bottom of the intake warm.
Yeah, because they did build these cars for people to drive every day when they were sold new.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just strictly for hot rodding. It really was for being a passenger vehicle.
Get in there and go. Right.
You know, the family van or the family wagon, or Dad's daily driver. They were expected.
Time to choke off quicker too. When you had the intake warm, that you didn't have it choke so long and use less fuel and stuff. But
I think it is important to note that the hardened valve seats were not due to performance. Chrysler was not looking to gain performance. This was a result of the unleaded fuel, of the de-leading of fuel.
Yeah, the valve would have a tendency to wear itself into the valve seat, and the valve, and it would change the height of everything up in here. Right.
So as the quality of gasoline was mandated and effectively, nosedived, what that effectively did to a lot of engine internals was that required some major modifications, and part of that was the hardened valve seats. Lead in fuel is a natural damper, and it allows for that combustion to be softened on those materials.
That, and it deposits onto the valve face, and then as it's spinning, doing this thing, it's not wearing in because it's got that barrier there.
Correct.
They try and put additives in unleaded fuel to kind of combat that somewhat, but there's nothing like some good old tetraethyl lead.
So unfortunately, a lot of guys who say that the 452 was a result of performance or gaining performance, it's quite the opposite. It was a result.
Making them live.
It was making them live with inferior fuel.
Exactly right.
Hey guys, we're real excited to announce our new shirts for Mopar Connection, including our I Speak Mopar shirt with some of the most legendary names iconic to Mopar, like Panther Pink, Go Mango, and Pistol Shifters, and much, much more. And we also have something special for you small block guys. The new Order of the Small Block. This one has the timing rotation of the small block LA and Magnum motors listed there on the back. And we still have plenty of our What Does Mopar Mean to You shirt and our Order of the Big Block shirt. You guys can find these all at the Mopar Connection store at www.moparconnectionmagazine.com/shop. So now we're going to move into some of the aftermarket offerings. Again, I toyed that I had a set of RPM Performers. That's, believe it or not, the RPM Performer Edelbrock cylinder head routinely is in the top 5 sellers for Edelbrock, which is, that's saying a lot, because a lot of times we think that Chrysler is such a third wheel compared to, you know, small X Chevrolet or LS Chevrolet or Ford.
It's not being pushed as hard.
Well,
we're
it's just,
out there
just numbers wise.
We're a different group.
We're more niche. It's a more niche market. But what was great is to learn that those heads were doing so well for a major manufacturer. We have 2. These are 440 source heads. These are their stealth heads.
Stealth heads, yeah.
So what's the difference between these two?
This would be an as-cast set, which they say flow as good as a well-worked-on set of 906. I can see the differences already where they would flow better. And this would be a CNC-ported stealth head that they pull a pound of aluminum out of when they do their porting on them. They look really good. They open them up really nice. We'll find out how they work. I've never run them, so we'll find out on this.
We're going to run the CNC heads on
the 440.
On the 440 that we're building for you.
Yep.
That's going to go in the Belvedere.
These are going to replace the 324s on the 413.
Oh, very cool. Okay. Something that I really liked about these cylinder heads is externally you can paint these and
it'll look like a 906.
It'll look just like a 906, and I thought that
they even put the roughness to the casting. You give it that cast iron look.
Yeah.
And that was sneaky. That's where the stealth comes in.
Right, and I think that is that's pretty cool to me. I love that, and especially because you could fit that underneath a stamped valve cover, and
nobody would be the wiser.
Right.
Unless they saw that really thick.
Yes.
Right here is way thicker than this. That would be the only tell right there.
Right, is your lower flange.
If you got a header on there, so it's probably because this boss is big.
Right.
You're not looking behind it by the spot.
Yeah, they're not cut out and contoured like you're going to see on that. Primarily because Edelbrock just has been one of the standards for 40 years.
Oh yeah.
And that was the Performer head, and then they went to the RPM Performer. And there were some key differences that Edelbrock had made with this head compared to, say, a factory head. And it's worth going over because although there are benefits, there's also a few
drawbacks.
I would say drawbacks, but you're probably going to have to do a little bit of a workaround. Was number one, they have now. Well, I should back up a little bit. These are the E-Street heads. These were their entry-level head. These are more budget-friendly. There's a little less CNC machining. You can see that all, you know, the exhaust and intake runners are as cast. So you're going to see that roughness of a cast runner. But these are their 75 cc chambered heads. And they do have an, I believe it's an 83.
It's 83, 84, I think.
Yeah, 83 or 84, which is a slightly larger. We were really impressed to see how much shrouding goes around the exhaust, and that really made for a really nice.
It brings some turbulence in, and they angled the plug to get it more into the center of between the valves rather than straight in the middle. As that
angled plug, although you're getting a really good combustion, you're getting a really good spark just from the location, you guys can see that, is it does tend to interfere with some headers. And
it makes difficulties with.
I don't think the manifolds will be so much of a problem depending on which manifold you run.
I've never tried to put a manifold, you kind of go up.
Yeah, why I can't imagine putting aluminum heads on it than running a log manifold. Don't get me wrong, there's people out there, but if I'm going to go through the effort of purchasing an aluminum aftermarket head, I'm going to run headers, even a short tube header. They have extended the exhaust runner, and you do have a thicker intake. So you're getting a little bit more of an extended runner on both ends. This does change the position of your exhaust. So very few aftermarket header manufacturers do take the time to measure their prototypes and build their jigs off of an aftermarket head. They'll use a factory head, which is both good and bad.
Sometimes you got to elongate some holes and stuff. Yeah.
Right. So there is.
That's hot rodding.
That's hot rodding.
Right.
You're getting into bed with aftermarket parts. But I have seen that because of the extended runners, you are getting the benefit of that, which is great, and you are getting far better combustion, even better. But you are going to be having to wrestle a little bit with fitment.
Yep.
And the biggest
and
note.
You've got some of these angle plug heads.
I do. I've messed with the Edelbrock Performer heads, I'd say 3 times already, 3 different engine builds. These are going on the 440 for Marcia.
It's gonna be spicy.
It's going to be a little bit more than I was originally planning on doing. Talk about project creep. But I will note the biggest concern and the biggest issue you're going to encounter is because of the thickness of your of the Edelbrock casting. Time and time again, I've encountered with running Edelbrock heads, you have this big thick casting that interferes with almost all aftermarket distributors.
Unless you get the tall pro billet.
You can get the tall pro billet that's going to stick it up way out here.
That's what I got over there.
But if you're going to run anything close,
looks stock or
close to stock, or even some of Comp and Edelbrock's own distributors will interfere with these. I have had to take, I would say, up to ½ an inch worth of material off of this corner.
Yep.
And that that's just one of those things. Again, it's back to hot rodding.
Yep.
So be prepared in taking measurements and in your early engine prep when you're building, being aware of how much material you're going to want to take off and measure accordingly. You can do it on a Bridgeport. I've done it with a flap disc and a grinding wheel. Yeah. I think I've clearanced 2 cylinder heads in the engine, on the engine itself. Yep. Which isn't the best. Then I think I did the trick flows off, and then we had to take more off on the dyno. So trick flow does have a little bit of the same issue as well. Actually, I shouldn't say a little bit, it's the same issue. It's the same issue. It's the same issue. So that again kind of gives a little bit of a wink and a nod to the stealth head. You're not cutting on the stealth head to fit.
Looks exactly like the other one.
Right. So again, you're getting benefits with these aftermarket heads, but you're also going to have to make some concessions. Exhaust fitment is one with the angled spark plug, and with the distributor, depending on your distributor choice. So let's talk about benefits of aluminum over cast iron.
Heat dissipation.
Heat dissipation, number one.
Biggest one.
Obviously, heat mitigation, controlling heat has been a personal windmill that I have fought my whole my whole life.
These don't pre-ignition, as you don't have that problem either because they run so much cooler.
True.
You can run more compression with an aluminum head because it'll pass off the heat quicker.
Right. That's something that we found is aluminum is far more forgiving when it comes to a flat top piston or a domed piston or a thin MLS gasket. You can bump up your compression. I mean, the Charger is 11 1/4 to 1.
You can run pump gas in.
And I run 93 pump gas all day long.
Because it doesn't have the buildup like cast iron holds heat forever.
Right.
And this way, this gets it to the water quicker.
Well, I think one of the the real evidences was that 505 with the trick flow 270s on it. We calculated a static compression 11.67 to 1, and we were running Shell 93 from right down the road, and we made 9 passes on that engine.
631 horsepower too.
631 and 660 pound-feet of torque.
Yeah, 659.
659, 660.
On pump gas.
On pump gas.
We could have tweaked and got more, but
we could
there's
have.
more in that engine.
I think so. But for all intents and purposes, 630 horse and 660 pound-feet on the street, that's a getter.
It's a parts breaker.
Yeah, it's a parts breaker.
That's parts breaking power.
That's fantastic. And that was done with pump gas in the heat of the day.
Yeah.
After multiple passes. It never pinged, it never detonated.
Never asked, and he kept on giving it a little more time. And where'd we end up? 34 degrees on that one? Or something?
Yeah, I think so. So again, aluminum, even if you are not looking at making 630 horse,
right? Even
a as-cast Stealth or the as-cast E-Street, which are both very...
it's bolt-on horsepower.
It's bolt-on horsepower, and you can run a thinner gasket.
Yep, you can do it and not worry about that stuff.
You could run like a 20 mil, and suddenly...
Yeah, your little, 20,000 gasket.
And then you run
That's what I'm going to use. I got a 22 that I'm using on these on the 413. Of course, it's distance down. This one I can't.
No.
Because we're zero decked on this one.
You're zero decked. We've measured that out.
Oh, I need 40,000.
Marsh's pistons are about 25 in the hole.
With your 20,000 shim, that dude's going to be...
She's
gonna be spicy.
I think I'm going to run those 40s from the Felpro kit.
Oh, hey, yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
We could do that.
I'll run those Felpros because those are 40, and because I was expecting to get the 84, and Edelbrock upsold me to the 75.
Hey, thanks.
And because I lack self-control and any sort of discipline, I said, "Oh, absolutely." So,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, I know.
Sure, you jest.
So with the 75, 25 in the hole, but with a 40 mil gasket, that roughly calculated. And my arithmetic might be off, and if you guys catch us in the comments, I'm happy to do it because we're 30 over. That math put me out to about 10. I want to say it was 1040 to 1.
I figured it'd be close to 10 and a half.
Yeah, 10. It was close to 10 and a half. I think I was just a hair under 10 and a half. I think it was like 1042 or 1040. But that was using the online calculator. So if you guys, and that of course is static compression.
Right, dynamics completely.
Dynamics different, and that's why again the 505 with that 11.6 to 1 was able to survive was because of the roller cam and being able to have that degree of overlap that did scrub off a lot of that compression. I think that engine's going in Chris Wozniak's Satellite.
He's going to have a handful.
That's going to be a fun car.
It will.
That's going to be a really fun car. But I know he was sweating the compression. He's like,
oh no.
He's like, oh, Kevin, I don't know, man. I'm like, oh, you'll be good. You'll be good. You'll be fine. As a lot of you guys have already seen, I got to spend a lot of time at Indy Cylinder Heads. And Indy has a whole mess of different wedge head designs.
Yeah, there's so much there.
And one of the interesting things that Indy offers that we don't see with a lot of aftermarket wedge heads is that they do offer heads that have cut off the pedestals and use their pedestals and their rockers.
Adjustable, yeah, because you can.
So they could go, 1.7 to 1, and the traditional 1.5 ratio rocker. Really, for all intents and purposes, works great for every engine that I've built. I've never messed with.
1.6s are okay. One's big cams, the 1.7s where you.
Right. I mean, these Proforms, and these Proforms are a roller tip rocker that
they're bushed, and
they are bushed.
So you don't have to worry about needle bearings eating into the shafts, and
even better. One thing is that these are identical to the branded Mopar roller rockers. Proform does make these for Mopar, so you can have them in Proform blue with the Proform logo, or you can get them in black with the Mopar logo.
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but the 440 source heads don't add any thickness to, or any height to the rockers, allowing you to run very close to stock pushrod lengths.
The stamp steel, they're designed in such a way that you can use all the valvetrain. They just bolt right up with nothing in the spot that whatever you had was on there, 906, drop it on. Push rods are supposed to be right. Everything just bolts right up.
Okay, because I know that the Edelbrock does bring the height up, and so you are going to have to go with a longer push rod.
Yeah, you can see it's taller.
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, this is just a beefier unit. Again, in extending the runner length, and there's just so much more mass to these that you are going to have to run a different push rod, and you're really doing yourself a disservice by going back to the factory rockers with these. With the idea of the stealth head, I like the idea that it is a direct replacement.
Just put it right on there.
You can pull it all off, put this guy on, and bump yourself up a good 20-30 horse.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Hey guys, we've got a new set of carburetor tool hats. These are fantastic tools for a lot of you guys who are looking at getting the most performance out of your carburetors. These 3D printed American made carbon fiber infused hats are super durable. They're designed to take an absolute beating, being thrown across the shop, being beaten on, dropped, you name it, they'll absolutely take it. They've been 3D printed with the Mopar Connection logo on them, and they include this really neat separated top. They also have all these pockets for your tools. They even have little pockets here for smaller tools and for all your jets. These are designed to fit all traditional style carburetors and will even fit your factory Carter style carburetor. And even if you're running fuel injection, they make a good cover just in case you're working on the engine and you don't want anything falling inside. Of course, you can flip it right over and you can keep all your carburetor tools inside of it, your extra jets, everything you need, maybe even some extra gaskets, so that if you are doing a lot of work on your carburetor, this little guy will be everything you need to take along in the trunk of your car to keep you up and running. If you're interested in one of these, why don't you head over to moparconnectionmagazine.com/shop, where you can find one of these guys for sale, as well as our t-shirts.
All right, so something that bears noting when it comes to factory heads is head studs versus head bolts. And what the aftermarket did that I think was a blessing, in my opinion.
Yeah, these terminate in the water jacket. So if you pull a bolt, the corners especially, they got water in them.
Which means that these aren't going to come out because they're just completely rusted in.
These will never come out.
I've never had.
I always go back with studs because it's just, you push the header up on there and tighten them down good. I hate them little header bolts.
Okay.
But these terminate dry. They dead end, so there's no coolant in any of these.
Right. That's something that even if they have, bigger water jackets, they never have the header bolts going into water. So
that's a blessing for sure.
So that is one thing to always look out for, is the factory head studs or exhaust studs.
You got to use some Teflon on them when you.
Yeah, chances are, if you're trying to pull these out, you're gonna have a bad day.
Oh, these would have to be drilled, and somebody already tried to drill that one.
Yeah, we already have a broken one. We already got a broken one.
That was off that 361 I had. I never did touch it. It always had a header leak. I wonder why.
Surprise. Now, certainly, again, we're only looking at 5 examples here. There's a huge variety of aftermarket cylinder heads. We just kind of wanted to give examples of differences in combustion chambers, differences in castings.
Kind of the evolution of...
Yeah, a little bit of an evolution of the 440 and RB cylinder head. We wanted to walk you guys through some of the things to look out for, you know, things to expect. Don't be surprised by some stuff that you find. And then obviously what stuff will work with factory components versus you'll have to go fully aftermarket. Again, people are building their engines at different budgets.
Exactly.
You know, some young guys are gonna have to scrounge through old boys' parts shelves and see what they can find.
Yeah,
and
some of us have shelves full of stuff.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
It starts with S, stuff.
So we want to thank the guys at Proform. We want to thank the guys at 440 Source. We definitely want to thank the team at Comp and Edelbrock for helping us out. We're doing a lot of really cool builds with Comp and Edelbrock parts. And so for you guys who want to do a little bit more investigation, we're going to put up all the links through Summit, because Summit Racing actually stocks almost everything here.
Yeah.
But we are going to put hyperlinks up for all the parts here if you guys want to see what we've been toying with and see if it's right for you, of course. We are going to have some follow-up videos as we continue to build Jim's 440, as we finish up Marsha's 440, and as we continue on with other projects. We've got some really cool engine builds. We've got a lot of dyno sessions coming up over at Tommy's Auto and Machine.
Yep.
And then we are going to start stepping into a little bit of Hemi and a little bit of third gen Hemi stuff. So guys, thanks again for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, why don't you give it a like, maybe leave a comment, and definitely share it with your friends to help us grow the channel. And if you want more awesome Mopar content, why don't you visit us over at www.moparconnectionmagazine.com, where new articles are written and published every single day, Monday through Friday, entirely subscription free to you. We'll see you there.